Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Then President Ronald Reagan famously asked then Russian leader Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down the Berlin Wall. Foreign policy was one of the key aspects of the former California governor's presidency. And this week, we were on hand as some of the top foreign policy minds from both parties gathered to honor Reagan and talk about the future.
I'm delighted to be here with an outstanding delegation from the Department of Defense.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin headlines the Reagan National Defense Forum. This also features Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines.
Thank you for doing this, and let me just say thank you so much for inviting me.
This gathering at the Reagan Presidential Library in Simi Valley unites the country's top military minds, including Mac Thornberry, a former chair of the House Armed Services Committee.
It's the only place and only time you get government and industry and investment and think tanks all coming together to talk about the future of U.S. national security.
Leon Panetta is here. He represented California in Congress, served as Bill Clinton's White House Chief of Staff, and as Barack Obama's CIA Director and Defense Secretary. What is the value of a day like today, the importance of having a gathering like this?
I think the most important thing is that it brings people from both parties, Republican and Democrat, brings people from the administration, brings people from industry together to talk about defense issues.
Republican Mike Garcia currently represents this area in Congress. Before that, he was a fighter pilot in the Navy.
National defense should be the great unifier, regardless of Democrat, Republican, left versus right. We should all be focused on national security and our troops.
Garcia chats with Mark Esper, who served as the Secretary of the Army and Secretary of Defense under Donald Trump. What do you see as the biggest national security issue right now?
Extremism in our country, from both sides, from both political extremes, too much partisanship.
This annual event began here at the Reagan Library in 2013. And not only does it bring political leaders together, it also takes the national media from Washington, D.C. to see these spectacular sights in Simi Valley.
It's a big thing for California, I think, to have this event.
Bret Baier hosts discussions here year after year. Before he began anchoring Special Report weeknights on the Fox News Channel, he was a field reporter specializing in national security issues. Talk about what it's like covering the national security space.
Well, I think you have to be skeptical. I covered the Pentagon during the Iraq War, and there was a lot of consensus about the intelligence from both sides, left and right, and world leaders. But skepticism was lacking.
5 years ago, 70% of Americans said they had, quote, high confidence and trust in the military. Now it's down to 48%, according to the new Reagan National Defense Survey.
You have to get in there, some of that skepticism, and you have to ask tough questions.
That same survey shows that 75% of Americans now view China as an enemy. Ken Calvert is a Republican congressman from California. He will chair the House Appropriations Defense Subcommittee in January. What do you see as sort of the biggest national security issue right now?
Well, China. China is, let's face it, is an adversary. They are very aggressive in the South China Sea. Obviously, we're worried about Taiwan.
When you look at the threat that China poses to Taiwan and the rest of the free world, frankly, it's a real existential threat.
Experts here say part of that threat includes an app that could be on your phone right now, TikTok.
It's a massive issue, and I've heard it probably 4 times, how you need to get your kids off TikTok. And these are intel folks who see the data. China's collecting a lot of data to then turn it around and use it how they want to, and that's a big threat to us.
Another focus here, Russia's war against Ukraine.
I think the most important thing to focus on right now when it comes to defense is how to be able to take our alliance like NATO and make sure that we are able to stop Russia and to make the point that alliances work.
According to the Pentagon, the U.S. has committed nearly $17 billion in security assistance to Ukraine since January of 2021. Do you think we need to spend more money or less money on that front?
Well, remember, not one U.S. soldier has lost their life in Ukraine. We've spent some money there, obviously, a substantial amount of money arming the Ukrainians to defend themselves, and they've done it quite well. They've destroyed over 3,000 Russian tanks, several thousand personnel carriers. And I don't celebrate this, but probably up to 30,000 Russians have been killed, 70,000 injured. And of course, the Ukrainian deaths and injuries are quite high also. But I think they're sending a message to Russia. You just cannot walk into an independent country and take it. If Russia would have succeeded as they planned to, they would have immediately taken Moldova, then the Baltics, and then put pressure on Romania and Poland. And so Putin's dream is to put together back what was the Soviet Union. And we need to stop his aggression. All you need to think about is what the Germans did back in 1936. And we need to stop that now, for they don't get the belief that they can get away with this.
There's also talk here about the future of U.S. troops.
Ready, 1, 2, 3.
Esper, the former defense secretary, poses with ROTC members.
My message to them was to serve their country. You don't have to do it for a career, but do it for 2-3 years, and you'll never regret it.
That Reagan National Defense Survey found only 13% of 18 to 29-year-olds are personally willing to join the U.S. military.
77% of today's youth are unfit to serve because they're overweight or have physical issues, health issues. And then of that, an even smaller percentage is disinclined to serve.
We have record low retention, record low recruitment right now on active duty. And I think we need to put more of a spotlight on that and really ask why. Why are people not joining the military?
Veteran Mike Garcia now works on the defense budget as a member of Congress and says we should increase pay for troops.
And an enlisted soldier, when they first come in, they're making $21,000 a year, Alex. And this in a period where we have record high inflation, that equates to about $12 an hour. So an in-and-out worker, here in Southern California is making $22 an hour. But an E1 or E3 in the Army, Navy, Marines are making anywhere from $21,000 to $24,000 a year, which is that's shameful, frankly. We need to figure out how to do better.
Democrat Jimmy Panetta represents Monterey in Congress and says inflation is impacting our defense too.
How we deal with inflation and how that affects our national security, how that affects our budgets, and also, to be frank, basically making sure that we in the United States Congress can pass a budget that takes into account inflation.
He's grateful that California gets to host this important discussion.
It's nice for us to have people to come to California. It's a lot nicer for them to come to California.
Throughout it all, the image of California's 33rd governor and America's 40th president is literally everywhere.
All of this conference takes place under the legacy of President Reagan and that peace through strength. And it's not partisan in the least bit, but still his legacy, his success, what he did for this country continues to inspire everybody that attends.
More of The Issue Is after the break, but as we go to commercial, a reminder you can stream our podcast anywhere. Just search for The Issue Is.